All right, let's talk about a word you've probably heard thrown around a lot: libertarianism. It's one of those political ideas that can be, well, a little confusing. So today, we're going to decode it, we'll get into its core principles, the big arguments, and even where libertarians disagree with each other, all straight from the source material.
You know, a lot of people hear libertarianism and they immediately think of social Darwinism, right? Like it's some kind of jungle out there where the strong just devour the weak. But funnily enough, the theory itself argues for the exact opposite. The idea is that a truly free market isn't a fight for survival. It's all about peaceful cooperation and everyone benefiting. So let's really dig into that idea.
So where do you even start with a philosophy like this? Well, it turns out the whole thing, the entire intellectual structure, is built on top of one single, powerful idea.
And that idea is self-ownership. It's the absolute foundation. Think of it like this. The theory draws an invisible, unbreakable circle around you. Inside that circle, your body, your mind, your life, you are the absolute ruler. No one else, not even the government, can just reach in and use you for their own goals. You belong to you. Period.
Okay, but you may be thinking, why? Why just accept that as the starting point? And that's a great question. The way the argument is made is actually pretty clever. It doesn't try to prove self-ownership directly. Instead, it kind of backs into it by showing you just how crazy the only other options are.
It's a classic logic trick, actually, proving something by showing that all the alternatives are just ridiculous. So the thinking goes, if you don't own yourself, what's left? Well, you've got two choices. The first one is that everyone owns an equal slice of everyone else. I mean, just think about that. You'd need to get permission from, 8 billion people just to get out of bed in the morning? It's complete paralysis. The other option? Well, that's where one group of people owns another group of people. And we have a word for that: slavery. So if one option is totally impossible and the other is morally repugnant, what are you left with? Self-ownership. It's presented as the only logical game in town.
Okay, so we've got the foundation. You own yourself. But it doesn't just stop there, right? The principle doesn't just apply to your body. It actually extends out into the physical world. Let's walk through how that works.
All right, so here's the logical chain, step by step. It all starts with that core principle we just talked about. You own your body.
Okay, following that, what is your labor? It's the energy you exert, the actions you take. It comes directly from your body. So if you own your body, it only makes sense that you also own your labor.
And here's the big leap from self to stuff. When you take that labor that you own and you mix it with something that nobody owns, say you go into a wild forest, chop down an unclaimed tree, and build a chair, that chair now becomes your property. You've literally mixed a part of yourself, your labor, into it. That's the basic idea behind what's called homesteading.
Okay, so we've established that everyone owns themselves and the stuff they create or acquire fairly. That's great. But what happens when we all have to interact with each other? You need a rule, right? One core principle to make sure we're not just bumping into each other and stealing stuff.
And that rule is called the non-aggression principle, or the NAP. Now listen closely, because the most important word here is initiate. This principle doesn't say no violence ever, not at all. Using force to defend yourself? Totally fine. Using force to get your stolen property back? Also fine. What's not okay is starting the fight. You can't be the one to throw the first punch, literally or figuratively. That's the one and only commandment in this whole system.
And believe me, they take this principle all the way. The logic is simple. If what you're doing is voluntary and it's between consenting adults and you're not initiating force against anyone else, then it has to be allowed. And this leads to some conclusions that, a lot of people would call pretty radical. We're talking about so-called victimless crimes, things that are often illegal today, but that don't directly harm a non-consenting person's body or property. All right, so don't start fights is the rule. Simple enough. But who's the referee? Who makes sure everyone plays by that rule? Who are the cops? Who runs the courts? Answering that question is actually what causes the biggest split within libertarianism itself.
And this is where you get the two major camps. On one side, you've got the minarchists. They basically say, okay, we need some kind of government, but it should be tiny. A night watchman state is what they call it. Its only job is to protect us from force and fraud, so cops, courts, and a military. That's it, nothing else. But then, on the other side, you have the anarcho-capitalists.
They go a step further and say, wait a minute, how does any state get its money? Through taxes, right? And isn't taxation taking money without consent? That's aggression. So for them, even a tiny state is illegitimate. They believe everything, and I mean everything, including law and defense, could and should be handled by competing private businesses.
And this quote from Murray Rothbard, wow, it really hits the nail on the head for the anarcho-capitalist position. They don't see taxation as paying your fair share. They see it as robbery, plain and simple. And if the state is funded by what they consider theft, then in their eyes, the state can't be a protector of rights. It's the biggest aggressor of them all.
So let's just recap the whole chain of logic here. It all starts with you owning yourself. That ownership extends to your labor, and then to the property you create with that labor. And to protect all of that, you have one simple rule, the non-aggression principle. See? The whole thing is presented as one single logical argument, from start to finish, all aimed at building a society based only on voluntary choices.
And that really leaves us with the big, provocative question, doesn't it? Can a complex society really work with just one single rule, don't start a fight? Is that enough to create a peaceful and prosperous world? Or is it just a beautiful idea that could never work in reality? And that is what we'll leave you to chew on.